What do you get when you drink a Coke? Probably diabetes. I don't know the rest of this song right now, but we're interviewing a guy about diabetes. Stay tuned.
Hello, listeners. This is F. Molina. I got Victoria Muniz, and I got Sunny Garza with our special guest, David Norec.
Yes.
How you doing, David?
Doing well. Thank you.
Doing good. Now, David, before you came on this show, we have a vetting process for all of our guests. And Victoria, would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about our vetting process?
It's a very high-tech process, which I will refer to just as Facebook stalking.
There we go.
I have a lot of experience in it. I dated in the Valley for many years, and so you had to be really good about finding people's dirt on social media. So when you reached out to us, I went and I looked at your profile. You didn't appear to be a weirdo, so first check.
Well, thank you.
And I just want to, if you haven't been on the show yet, it's probably because you're a weirdo. I'm joking.
But seriously. And then I noticed that we had a mutual friend, Kristen Cerón.
Yes.
And that is...
She is my niece.
Okay. So, hi, Kristen.
Hey, Chris.
So, David, you are one of our local authors, right?
Yes.
And you've written a book, right?
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about the book you've written?
Yeah. So it's called The Adventures of Exo and Psi, and it's a play on the word exercise. And it really comes from tragedy. In 2013, I lost my brother to diabetes. That was Kristen's dad.
How old was he?
He was in his late 50s, I believe.
Wow, that's young.
But yeah, and I saw him go from an all-star athlete. You know, he played collegiate soccer for a little bit to be wheelchair bound and just not able to do all the things that he would really like to do. And that was, I guess, our first really big loss in the family. And the very next year, I lost a sister also to diabetes. And so from that, I was just driving home one day and I stopped at a stoplight and it was a simple prayer I made to God. It was, if you want me to do something different with my life, put it in my heart right now. And almost immediately, the idea to write a children's book, calling it Exo and Psi, a play on the word exercise. The characters live in a town called Obesity, for obesity.
That's awesome.
And can I say something about that? So when we do podcasts, we try to put them on the calendar because we're three attorneys. We have a lot of things going on at once. And so I think it was maybe over the weekend or late last week, I saw something pop up on the calendar and it said, something interviewed David from Obesity, and I'm
I
like,
saw the same thing.
And I was
on my
like,
calendar.
and I'm like, and I knew that you were coming on, and I was like, where the hell is Obesity, or what is that?
Well,
and I kid you not, I almost Googled it thinking it was like a company or something.
Well, McAllen, Texas might show up.
Yes.
Might show, yeah.
But
Somewhere in the
but there is
Rio Grande
something
Valley,
behind that, though. I mean,
Yeah.
McAllen, actually with McAllen, Edinburgh, and Mission,
yes.
We are the fattest city in the United States.
Right, we got grouped together.
I know. And Charles Barkley has a field day like with Texas because he says like whenever he comes to Texas, all the people are just fat. Like, yeah.
Charles
So
Barkley shouldn't be talking.
That's true.
Being honest.
I was like, even his head's chubby.
That's
but you're right though.
ridiculous.
We were like labeled like one
Yes.
like of the fattest like cities.
Number one.
Number one.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I guess that's where Obesity, I guess, came about. You know, I mean,
So-
we're living in Obesity.
So you lost your family member, and you basically said "fuck you" to diabetes, and you said, "I'm going to do something about it."
Maybe not in those same words, but yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the way like anyone
that's
would
exactly.
feel when you feel like a disease like took one like of your family members.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when you lose a
did
family
something.
member.
Wow.
When did you write this?
I started writing it in 2015.
Okay.
It took me about half a year to write it, but what really was the longer process was actually the illustrations, which I didn't do, but that was a long process. So about a year and a half.
So I'm curious about that. Not that I want to write a book, but I'm curious as to how the process works. I mean, you obviously write it on on Word format or something. What do you do after you write? You've got your book ready. Where do you send it? What do you do?
For me, for example, since I'm self-publishing this, my first thing after I finished writing it was to try to find a local artist, somebody that I could meet with face to face, bounce back ideas, and then have him put those ideas on illustrate them and stuff, and that's probably the next step. And then after that, there's a lot of editing.
Can you tell us who your local? I'm sorry.
Sorry. Was this the first time that you've ever written something like this before, or do you have a background in writing? Or
I used to be an English teacher.
Okay.
But this is the first time I've ventured into writing something like this.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Can you tell us who your local artist is?
Yeah, his name is Edgardo Gonzalez.
Man, we should have known that we could have him on. Oh, there we go. It's on the book. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, he's a brilliant artist.
And he lives here in the Rio Grande Valley. What city?
He lives here in McAllen.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And like, how did you work with the artist to get like matching your words and his creative concept on what to put down like on paper?
Yeah,
how it's supposed to look.
So I would have this blank paper with just words, and so we would meet up, and I would say, you know what, this is what I kind of want to see, but then him as an artist, he would take over, and he would just come out with something completely unique, and I'm like, whoa, that's not what I really had in mind, but that's so much better. Yeah, and then so we just went from there, and I gave him a lot of creative freedom in illustrating the stuff, and
the illustrations are great.
Yeah, he did an amazing job. Job.
The illustrations are great. And so the story is, from what I could tell in reading the book, you've got a boy and his dog, Exo and Sai.
Yes.
And they're battling a bully who is...
Yeah, the main, I guess, villain in this first book, his name is Chip, and his dog Nacho.
Right.
So this first book represents the evils of potato chips.
Okay.
But the real villain
potato
is
chips
the mayor.
Are evil.
They
I
are
will
evil.
attest to that.
But the real villain is the mayor, Diabetes, which
Okay.
stands for diabetes. And then the real good guy in the series, his name is the chief of police, Will Ness, for wellness.
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Sonny was hoping that it would be like, maybe Coach CrossFit or something like that.
Hey, well, I mean, this is the first book in a series of books, so I'm always open to suggestions.
So you're working on a series now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is number one.
Number one.
All right, do you have a number two?
Then I have a daughter, a beautiful daughter. She's a freshman in college. And I wanted to model the second book after her because girls, they're important. They need to be main characters in stories.
Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that?
What?
We've always maintained that girls are important to us.
Yes, girls are very
Keep
important.
going. Don't let her interrupt you.
Don't let
the female interrupt you. Keep going.
Go ahead.
Just kidding.
So the next book is going to be called The Adventures of Arrow, which is a little girl, and her cat Bix, so aerobics.
Oh, very cool.
Oh, nice.
And do you have like an estimated like publish date or?
I'm looking. My sister, the one who passed away, her birthday was in November, and November is also Diabetes Awareness Month. So right. I want to release a new book every November until the final book.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so the book, I guess that's based on for your daughter. How is that different from this particular book, or what's the angle?
It's pretty much the same thing. They all take place in Obesity, but Exo and Sai and Arrow and Bix haven't met yet, and so they're going to have different characters. In fact, when I did a school visit here in Edinburgh in October, one of the things I do is when I do a question and answer session after the presentation, I ask the kids, hey, if you guys have any ideas for characters, let me know. And there was this one young man, he raised his hand and he said, what about a character called Marsha Mello for Marshmallow? I'm like, dude, that is awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, so she's going to be one of the villains in the next book.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. That's really cool. So you go to these... You go to these school visits, and what does a school visit consist of? What do you do for the school?
For the younger kids, probably like pre-K to first grade, I just read the book, but my presentations are really different in the fact that they're interactive. Okay. The kids have to get up, they got to move around. In fact, in the book, there are different exercises that the characters do, and so does the reader. So when you read the book, you actually have to exercise. By the time you finish reading the book, you have an exercise workout. So for the little kids, it's just pretty much reading the book, and we exercise, we have fun.
So you got like squat jumps in there.
Yeah.
You should come to the office in the afternoon.
Read the book to us and make us exercise. Yeah.
Go up and down the stairs, guys.
There you go. And then for the older kids, I explained a little bit about my personal background with my brother and sister, losing them, and then we go over the book, and then we have a Q&A afterwards. So it's a little bit longer.
How's, I guess, the difference maybe between like the younger kids and the older kids? Like, are they getting the concept? Are they, basically understanding how important it is to be, well? And
they do. For this book, I always open up by asking, hey, who loves potato chips? And almost everybody raises their hand. And then I tell them, well, that's not really the best thing that you can eat. But I try to keep it really, really simple for the younger kids and try to get them, hey, don't eat that and don't drink that. But try to keep it a little bit more simple for the younger ones.
And it's tough because there's so many issues at play there, right? Yeah. The kids don't have control over what the parents give them.
It's poverty. It's poverty. Poverty is the number one cause of like obesity.
It is.
It is the number one cause.
Food's cheap.
You try to eat healthy.
You try to eat healthy, and it's very expensive. And if it's not expensive, it's harder. Like if you want to have like a nice, good meal, you make some grilled chicken, you make some vegetables, takes more time. So if you have somebody who's working a couple of jobs, they come home to their kids, what's easy to make? Let me make something that's already like pre-prepared, like, a frozen pizza or some Hot Pockets or something like that. So, and it's really,
it was really interesting. My wife today, actually, she was at HEB and she goes, holy cow, this is a whole new section. And if I'm not mistaken, she was probably at the HEB in Sherryland, but they had a whole wall of all different kinds of pre-prepped foods that you can buy. What the price was, I'm not sure, but I mean, it could get expensive buying individual meal prepped foods, right? But you've got a situation where they're promoting a healthy protein, a veggie, and a healthy carbohydrate at the very least. Because I saw it wasn't a meme, but it was like a funny video, and it was, what did you pack for lunch in the 90s versus what did you pack for lunch today? And it's they're two young adults, right? But they're dressed like junior high kids. And it says, what you pack? She goes, what'd you pack for lunch today? And it says 90s. And she goes, I got some Gushers. I got a fruit roll up. I got a Capri Sun. I got a Lunchable. And in the 90s, we've got all of these highly processed, manufactured foods that are essentially just chemicals. And back in the 90s, they were late 80s and 90s, they were just so convenient. Not only were they convenient, but they were new. Yeah. And it was pure sugar and chemicals, and it tasted good to everyone. Nobody knew what it was doing to the body, right? Then we fast forward in this video, and it says, what did you pack for lunch? And it's like 2019, right? She goes, I got some carrot sticks, and I've got some hummus, and I've got a kale salad. And it's like, that's like the other extreme, right?
Like, for the record, I didn't even know what hummus was until I was probably like 32.
That's when you could afford it, right?
Oh, yes, that's true. That's true.
So David, I mean, child obesity, its causes, I mean, everyone like argues. But when you were preparing like this book and based on your experiences and everything, I mean, what, in your opinion, what do you think's causing it, and how do you think, society or the agencies, the governments can do to
well, I mean,
help?
I think you said it best when you said poverty. I mean, it's a big factor, and it's so. I mean, you drive around and you see 10 nuggets for $1.50. What parent is not going to want to do that, spend that, and here you go, eat that.
It stops hunger pangs.
Yeah,
it does.
It stops hunger pangs.
And it's convenient.
It's not giving the body any nutrients, but it stops the kid from saying, I'm hungry,
The Snickers commercials, when you said that, the first thought that went through my mind was those Snickers commercials. Like, are you hungry? Eat a Snickers.
Yeah.
Right?
And you know what's crazy?
Sonny, you're being a little cranky.
Have a Snickers.
You know what's crazy? I've thought about this a lot, and I'm like, if you pet owners, if you have a dog or a cat, you would never feed your pet what you give your kids. You would never,
that's true.
Pour some soft drink in your dog's bowl or anything like that, or give them some chocolate or chips.
Yeah, when you give your dog soda.
Never.
No.
So I'm super anti soda. I don't remember the last time I actually drank a soda. My kids don't ever. We don't keep them in the house.
Nice.
They think this is like drinking a soda is like the ultimate food sin in our house, right? So much so because I do drink alcohol. But that's not as much sugar as soda is what I tell people.
Daddy's medicine.
But I don't mix it with anything. So my daughter, you know, she's 7 now, but at the time I think she was 5, and she had to draw a picture of her daddy, and that's me. And so I've got a can in my hand, and the teacher goes, "Ooh, is your daddy drinking a soda?" She goes, "No, my daddy does not drink sodas. That's a beer." I was like, fair enough.
He tries to be healthy, okay?
No, but I stay away from beer too. I do drink alcohol, but I stay away from the sugary stuff because that's the killer.
You try to keep it clean with tequila.
Yeah, I drink tequila. That's about all I drink.
Tequila and beer.
Nope.
No,
not beer.
He's not
Usually not even
not
beer.
a big beer drinker.
Nope.
No.
Wow. No, and then you're right. You talk about the government. There was a great documentary a few years ago called Fed Up. And it talks about sugar and how it's invaded our lives and how throughout the course of our history, people have tried to stand up to these big corps and corporations. And, you know, something always happens where they get shut down. And so...
And that's a really interesting point because your sister lives in Australia, right?
Yeah, she lives in Australia.
Okay, my brother-in-law's sister also lives in Australia, and their biggest complaint about American food when they come over is that everything is so much sweeter than it is in Australia. Does your sister have the same complaint?
Sweeter and salty.
Yes.
Sweeter and saltier. Sweet and savory,
Yeah,
I guess. That's an
I've
American
heard that
thing.
also.
Yeah, and so it's even in you know, foods that we cook, and not manufactured and processed foods, but like just regular whole foods. They said for some reason it is sweeter here than you would get in Australia.
It's what we've become accustomed to.
I've never been to Australia, so I don't know. But I'm guessing, you know, wherever plants are moving this stuff, they're adding water with salt and sugar
or something.
Yeah.
For someone that looks like a little platypus, you've never been to Australia. Wow.
Really?
Are we doing that now?
Well,
we have a guest.
Yeah, we have a guest. That's right. Now, David, you've been going from like elementary schools, high schools, promoting your book. The most important thing is you're talking to kids too, right?
Yes.
And what are you hearing like from the kids regarding their eating habits and obesity and diabetes?
Well, I mean, after the presentation, they're very excited, and you know, they're like, okay, you know, no more chips. I'm not going to do that or whatever. But then they go home, and I don't know what kind of impact, you know, is being had there. So
Right.
I think, you know, that's tough right there.
Have you had any type of, I guess, maybe like events with like parents saying like, you know, it's one thing to like educate kids about this, but if they're not getting that reinforcement at home, or, you know, if everybody's just getting home and eating right in front of the TV, and then, you know, there's no walking around or movement.
Yeah,
and stuff like
that's
that.
a great point. I mean, and I have done some like that, but you know, I mean, I wish. I think sometimes it takes a tragedy to happen in your life in order for you to make some changes.
Agreed.
Open your eyes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they don't want to realize that. But being a teacher, I would have kids who were diabetic and they had to excuse themselves during the school day to go take their shots of insulin or some other stuff. And it's pretty sad to see young kids having to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, if they're eating 3 meals a day, it's almost all sugar.
Yeah.
You know, but one of my absolute pet peeves is seeing kids sit down for lunch, you know, their actual lunch, and they've got hot Cheetos, cheese, and a giant soda, and like that's your lunch, like that. But it's cheap and it's
you know what, though?
It's available. And
What's crazy though, because I've had this conversation before, like with my boyfriend and with other people. My boyfriend has a son. He's 13 years old right now. Not my boyfriend, his son. I'm like, my boyfriend's 37. But, you know, my boyfriend was a very picky eater when he was younger. And he would say that he was a nightmare for his parents, that if they could just get him to eat, that was like fine. And he had the same issue with his son, you know, as he's, you know, grown older, where there's just certain things he won't eat, and it won't necessarily be something unhealthy that he wants to eat, but he is very picky. But sometimes, yes, all he wants to have is like Little Caesars or Whataburger, which I'm like, he's 13, he's involved in a lot of sports, he's super active, so it balances out. But then it's also like, how do you try to teach good habits so that way later on when you're, in your 30s and, you're not running track, you're not doing football, you don't still have those same eating habits. So I just think, but I do think that it's hard because I've heard from several parents, because I've had friends who are parents who said, I can't get her to eat anything but this. And they happen to be like, maybe those like Cheetos, but they're like kids Cheetos, but they're still Cheetos. And they're like, she won't eat anything else. She won't eat chicken. She won't eat.
And I think that's crap. Because
I agree, because we grew up different.
Well, you talk to my, I think my wife does a fantastic job feeding our kids, and we have friends and we know people who my kid he'll only eat chicken nuggets or he'll only eat a peanut butter jelly sandwich. You know what? Put the plate in front of them, and if they don't eat it, they don't eat it. They're gonna be really hungry, and the next plate you put in front of them, they're probably gonna eat that, regardless of whether or not it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or chicken nuggets, because that's what we do to our kids. And the only thing I do notice is that my 3 kids, they all have completely different tastes in food. My son's 9, my daughter is 7, and my youngest daughter is 4. My son is meat, potatoes, some veggies, no pasta, no breads. I mean, you give him a plate of spaghetti, he'll eat the meat sauce and leave the spaghetti there. He just doesn't, it doesn't appeal to him. My middle daughter, she's all pasta, bread, cheese.
Like, that's my girl.
Butter. I mean, she attacks the carbs immediately and she leaves the meat. And so we have to get her to balance it out. We're like, hey, stop eating the pasta, eat your meat. The little one is, I think she's a vegetarian. Because my wife made a roast last night, and we had a podcast last night, and I got home a little late. And my wife usually puts mushrooms in the roast, and she goes, Vivian didn't eat a single bite of meat. She ate a salad, like I did, and she ate all of the mushrooms in the pot roast. And I was like, I was going to ask if you had any mushrooms. She's like, no, your daughter ate all of them.
Vivian had all of them.
It's real funny to see their food preferences and what their tastes are. And they do that on their own, right? But they're picking off the plate that's in front of them.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And they don't really have that many bad options in front of them.
Wow.
So
that's pretty cool.
But again, we can afford to feed them like that. Mm-hmm. And that's where it gets complicated.
1%er.
That's what.
Yeah.
No, 1%er. 1%er.
Shut up.
Now, guy.
No, I'm trying to be serious here. It's a real issue because what do you do when healthy food is
time? It's time.
Look, it's also time.
It's also a time.
Yeah.
What is it? Ramen or ramen?
Ramen.
I saw a news article last week.
All sodium.
Ramen will kill you. Yes, that it leads to heart disease, directly to heart disease.
But is that ramen as prepared? Because if you just do the ramen noodles with something else,
instant ramen.
Ramen.
So I'm not completely convinced that salt is bad for you. I think salt's actually pretty good for you. I think we've been led to believe that salt's bad for you. I think the real culprit,
extra stuff
I think the real culprits are all the extra chemicals and just the sugar. I am just anti-sugar.
But why do people eat like ramen? No one chooses to freaking eat it.
Because if you're in college and you don't have money, that's what you eat.
And 2 minutes in the microwave and it's out.
I tell you what, I can make a killer plate with a pack of ramen noodles, half an onion, zucchini, and
an egg.
The cheapest beef and an egg. Yeah,
yep.
And I mean.
And you could probably sell that in a restaurant.
I want to. You know what? That's how I convinced my wife to date me. Like. I prepared a meal with ramen, and it wasn't just the ramen itself. It was a bunch of other stuff, and she was pretty impressed. She was like, hey, this guy can cook.
Was it
we won't starve.
Like instant ramen? Or was it?
It was instant ramen. It was college.
No, let me share this freaky story with you. In law school, you're strapped for time, right? Mm-hmm. You're always reading. You always got to prepare briefs and memos. So I would buy this big thing of ramen noodles, and I would eat it every day.
Oh,
right?
man.
One day I'm at the rec center on the treadmill, and I'm running, and I smell ramen noodles. I'm like, man, I smell ramen. Like, what's going on? And I smelled my
seasoning coming out of your pores.
I smelled my sweat, and it smelled like ramen noodles.
He's like,
it completely freaked me out. I go, that's it. I go, I'm gonna eat something else because this can't it can't be good for you.
It can't be healthy if you're smelling it.
It can't be good for you.
Yeah,
Off your
sweating
skin.
ramen.
So I want to go back to these presentations that you give at the schools. You mentioned what you do with the younger kids, but we didn't get into what you do with the older kids. Do you try to educate them on the dangers of sugar, or how do you do that?
It gets a little more intense with the older kids, along with telling my story, but also, educating them, like you said, telling them, this is, and every book is going to be different. It's going to have a different theme as to, what to stay away from. This one's potato chips, and trying to tell them, look, there are healthier alternatives, and then if we just turn our eyes to that, you could live longer, healthier lives. And in fact, after I wrote the book, I became a diabetic, which was it was crazy. I was pretty upset about that. But then I'm thinking, well, you know what? It adds to my presentations, because now I can speak as a diabetic. But before that, a couple years before, I went to the doctor and they said, look, you're pre-diabetic. If you change the way you eat and exercise more, you won't have to worry about it.
Do they say you can reverse pre-diabetes, or
you can? And I didn't listen, of course.
Oh, wow.
And that's where I'm at. But you know what? I'm not upset about that, because now I can go and talk to these kids, talk to people as a current diabetic. And
what does a diabetic go through? What does your day consist of? How has it affected your life? So our listeners can know, hey, you don't want this.
There might be like some people that have never experienced diabetes whatsoever, and they're thinking to themselves, I'm never gonna have to worry about that.
Well, like, it's really trying to balance your sugar levels. And, if it's too high, you start getting headaches, you feel dizzy, you just don't feel well at all. And then if it gets too low, well, then, like my doctor said, if it's too low, that can kill you in a matter of minutes. Wow. And you need to do something drastically quickly to get your sugar back up. And so it's just a matter of, you could be feeling well in the morning, and then all of a sudden, boom, it just hits you. And it's just, some of the medication, they're just really horrible. I remember the doctor gave me, it was called metformin, and it would just make me sick. I couldn't take it anymore. And then, of course, the insulin, you have to keep it with you, travels with you. And what a lot of people do, though, that they should never do, is they carry their insulin and they're like, well, let me inject myself and then let me go eat whatever the heck I want, Yeah. And that's terrible. But if you,
that's not
eat
how this
well,
works.
it's not how it works.
And David, I've noticed something about your book. Hispanics tend to be genetically inclined to suffer from diabetes.
Is it genetics, though?
It's
Do you think
genetics.
it is? Has that been proven? Has that been shown?
It can run
or
in
is
families.
It just that we're more prone to eat sugar because, well, we're a minority, and being a minority, we're not as educated as others?
That's an interesting question, because it runs higher in Hispanics and African Americans.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious, Hispanics where? Because is it Hispanics that are predominantly like here in the United States, or do you have like Hispanic culture, like people who live in Mexico? Because people who live deep in Mexico, they don't eat the way we do.
Right.
In Puebla, when they're running on, they got to run to the next town.
Or in South or Central America, they don't eat the way we do.
That's true.
Yeah. No, one of my best friends is from law school. He's from Mexico City, and we stayed in Mexico City over spring break with his family, and it was really interesting the way they eat. It's I don't know if it's European or not, but it's like a medium-sized breakfast, a big lunch, and when I say big, it's not that big, right? And then it's a small dinner, and it's like this tiny little serving for dinner, but dinner's not till like 9:30 or 10, right? And
like this is
they're
like a
all
snack.
and they're all string beans. Right, they're skinny as can be, as healthy and fit as can be, and there's just no overeating that you can witness. But no, I don't know if I don't buy that we're genetically inclined to get, when I say we Hispanics, we're genetically inclined to get diabetes. I think it's a matter of education, and being informed of what these foods can do to you, and the fact that we're in the land of hot Cheetos and cheese, man. Logically thinking about it, the way I think about it, I just don't buy that we're genetically inclined for it. I do think that it's more prevalent down here because there are more people down here who are uneducated.
We talk actually a lot about fitness on here and like health and stuff like that. Sonny's a big proponent of
Yeah,
I am.
CrossFit.
Remember, there's physical and mental.
Well, I don't have my mental health is my mental health is is another story.
But what I've noticed about your book, David, is these colors, right?
Yeah.
That you're using. When flipping through the pages, they're like I don't know. I get the feeling like very like I don't know.
Vibrant.
Vibrant, like the
Well, I mean, I don't know.
cocoa.
I don't know how
cocoa. I think
cocoa.
it's the best way, like that you describe it.
Well, I don't know how good
like
this is going to sound, but like the colors and like you see like on my stuff that I wear, I'm a huge Houston Astros fan. And I know
Let's go there. Let's go there, guys.
Oh my god.
I'm an Astros fan too.
Thank you.
I'm okay.
Before or after the scandal?
I think
Still.
everybody,
Still.
they all do it. And the dude who snitched on the Astros is nothing but a snitch who snitched everybody out. And they're just making an example of the Astros.
So you were saying, David, you're a huge Houston Astros fan, and you
Yes.
were going to tie it in. Into the
Yeah,
colors?
so the colors, if you notice, like you got the blue and the orange, and then we just played off of it from there.
Yeah, because it looks like
Yeah.
a
So when you
jersey.
walked in,
He's even wearing an Astros jersey. Well, it's
Yeah,
it's an
Astros type
unofficial
jersey. That's
Astros
pretty
jersey. There you
cool.
go.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah, no, when you walked in, I took a quick glance at your shirt and I hadn't read it yet. And I go, oh, dude, this guy wore an Astros shirt to the podcast.
No, pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, so David, you live in what city?
McAllen.
McAllen, and you indicated to us that you are willing to give presentations
Yes.
at elementary schools, high schools.
Anywhere that will take me.
Okay, so
If they subscribe to your YouTube channel.
so if they subscribe to our channel,
The Ef'n Sunny Show, yes.
and you would be willing to go and give a free presentation.
Yes, I am.
about your book.
Because you know what? I was thinking about that a couple weeks ago, and I'm thinking, okay, why was this idea put in my heart? And yeah, I mean, there might be some good financial reasons for that, but that's not the reason why it was put in my heart. It's to go out there and try to talk to, especially kids and parents, whoever, educate them.
To change lives.
Exactly. And so if I'm sitting at home, I'm not in front of people trying to educate them, trying to teach them how to eat better and exercise. So yeah, I am more than willing to do that as long as they subscribe to the Ef'n Sunny Show.
Have you thought about doing like maybe an actual and I don't even know how one would even do this, but so I've talked about like I'll do 10Ks, 5K runs, things like that. I'm doing a Spartan run next month.
Nice.
And what I've noticed is like Edinburgh 10K, I did the McAllen Marathon 10K. A lot of parents will take their kids out there
Yes.
and you see them and I'm just like, man, like it just the running community down here, you have people
It's huge.
all
It's
different
awesome.
kinds of
Yeah, it
shapes
is.
and sizes.
Yes.
People encouraging strangers. Like it's seriously like when I go out there, it warms my heart to see how good other people are to each other
Yeah.
in that because you have your elite runners. Like I know when I did the Edinburgh 10K, there's a part of it where you're running past like mile 2 and people who are coming back up are already on mile 5 and you see the elite runners coming up.
And they're going so fast.
And they're going
Yes.
so fast, and you're like, I still have like 3/4 to go, and they're almost done. But you start cheering them on, and the other
Yeah.
people who are walking, and so I don't know if that could be something to where like to have like maybe like a 5K where like you have parents encouraging like bringing their kids to do something like that. But I think that would be like really cool. So that way, you're getting the parents involved, but you're also making sure that they're bringing their kids and starting these like healthy habits.
Yeah, that's an awesome idea. I'm helping the South Texas Juvenile Diabetes Association. They're sponsoring a run in March, and I'm going to be
sweet.
there to help them with that one.
When is
Hey,
it in
send
March?
us a
I'll send you guys. Yeah, I don't
Why
know
don't
the
you?
exact
Yeah,
date.
send us the info because we'd love. I'll run it.
I'm doing my Spartan is March the 14th, but if it's a different weekend than that, then yeah, for
Perfect.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not available that weekend either. But if it's any other weekend in March, I can
I'll
do it.
send you guys the info.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and
Super cool.
Where can people?
Will you do it too?
My fat butt will run.
Oh, there we go.
We'll run it. Just send us the invite.
Oh, there we go.
All three of us will run it. Where can people buy your book?
Right now, they can get it straight through me. My website is www.davidnorec.com. And I love everything about being local. So I have some friends of mine. I'm going to give you some places that have this book for sale, and they're kind of off the wall. I mean, they're not like you would
That's
think.
okay.
I'm currently working on trying to get in Barnes and Noble, but that's a little bit of a process.
Yeah, that's a Fortune 500 company. Yeah.
Yeah. But a buddy of mine owns the RGV Spy Tech in McAllen.
Right. Okay.
He has some copies in there. Cine El Rey, they've been a great supporter.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
There's some books there. Bert just had me leave some there. And another buddy of mine who, it's the little lingerie shop on Main Street in McAllen.
Hey. If I knew your books were there, I would have gone and purchased them at that location. And where else?
Like sex is part of a healthy lifestyle.
I can't
too.
pronounce it. There's a little bookshop on Main
some zucchinis.
called, I think it's like it's a French Gem Le Louvre. Something.
You should just set up shop like the Girl Scout cookies on one side. Let them sell cookies, and then try to sell your book to people. Hey, you should probably take this too.
I did actually did a first audition for Shark Tank in San Antonio a couple years ago, and that went very well. Actually, they were very interested in the book and possibly getting on the show for that.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, so it's a process. It's been a process.
And how long have you been like plugging this book?
I actually got my first official printed books in November of this past year, 2019.
Wow.
It's been a long process. Yeah.
Where's the tapping?
I don't know which one.
Thank you. And the book was one of the winners of the McAllen Chamber of Commerce Innovation Grant, where they gave me some seed money to actually. I used that money to print the first.
Holy
the
smokes!
first books.
That deserves another.
It definitely does. That's awesome.
Hats off to McAllen. It's good that they're doing stuff like that because we need more stuff like this like out there. And you know what, David? We need more people like you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Because there's nothing like greater than having a cause.
Yeah.
And devoting your efforts to something that's greater like than yourself. Because you could be doing something else, right?
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, I could be doing something else, and maybe my family sometimes wishes I would be doing something else. But no, this was put in my heart, and I don't want to. I owe it to my brother and my sister to fight the fight, and I know it's too late for them, but it might not be too late for somebody else's kid. You know,
or somebody else's
parents
brother
should not
or
have
sister.
to bury their kids. I've seen that too much in the last few years, and you know, parents shouldn't have to bury their kids.
And David, okay, so we have 15 copies of your book that you've agreed to autograph.
Yes.
And that we are going to give away to the first 15 people who comment below with their name and they share this post, and that you like it, you'll get a free book. First 15
free autograph
people.
book. Yes.
Free autograph book.
Awesome.
And the other thing that just explodes our mind when you first reached out to us, our first thought was, holy smokes, we have a local author living in our community.
Yeah.
Are there other like authors out there? I mean,
man, there are many others, and that are just doing so many wonderful things. The one that pops right into my head, and I say this because he's helped me a lot tremendously going through the process. His name is Sean Elliott Russell, and he has a book called "Be Still, Little Tree, Be Still," and how I deal with physical exercise and that part. His deals with anxiety, and his story is amazing. And he's doing the same thing, going around schools and trying to get kids of all ages to, how to deal with anxiety. And
I love hearing things like that because it's more about just including other. It's not about competition, or it's not like there's too many of us. It's like, how can we help each other?
Exactly. And you know what? I mean, when I remember when I was teaching some of our, at least one of my campuses where I was at, we raised, I think it was over $2,000 to bring an author from California or something. And now that I've written a book, I'm like, why?
Why? We have so much.
There's so much talent here. I mean, let's help each other out. Yeah, let's stay local.
That's awesome.
That is so cool. That is so cool. And if people want to like reach out to you, did you have like an email like address?
Yeah, EXO. That's EXO and CY at gmail.com. They can reach me there, or just go to the website davidnorec.com and reach out to me there. Fill out any information. I'll be more than happy to go visit kids or adults. It doesn't matter. I'll do any kind of presentation.
And if you know like any other like authors that want to plug like their book, please let them know, because I mean we were just shocked, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to find local people like yourself that have devoted their talents, their arts, their lives to something greater, and they're doing something good for our community. And to know that there's people like you and there's authors out there, wow, it just blew our minds.
That's awesome.
Wow.
When I first reached out to you guys, I was very intimidated. I'm like, I hope they can maybe give me a shot, But
and then I was like, sure.
We don't, we were talking about that today, about 3 lawyers running a podcast. And I was like, I hope more people want to come on. And we do. Thankfully, we have people who want to come on the show, right? But I'm glad to hear that we come off as normal human beings, right? Because I'm worried that people don't want to come to the show. It's like, I ain't going to go in a room with 3 lawyers. Are you kidding me?
And you know what? Like David, Sonny is one of the nicest people. But however, on this show, he comes off as a little...
Seriously?
A little, what's that word, Victoria?
Arrogant?
Ah, there it is.
Wow. Wow.
Sonny's like, it's not arrogance if you just know you're better than everybody.
Write a book about it, Sonny.
You know what? I'm going to write a book about Arrow and Gantz.
Arrow and Gantz.
Well, David, thank you so much for coming on to our show. It was a pleasure meeting you. And I don't know if I could speak for you guys, but I would love to have David back.
Yeah, for sure.
I would love to come back, man. I wish I could can I bring a bed or something here?
There's a couch over there.
That's all I need.
You might have to share it with JD, though.
JD, we're cool, right?
Yeah.
All
JD,
right, we'll be
I like
fine.
to snuggle.
And for our listeners, JD is our Google checker, our IT guy, our video guy. He makes sure that everything goes right, that the cameras don't fall and everything like that. And he's awesome. So thank you again, JD, for helping us out.
Thanks, JD.
Thanks, JD.
Till next time, listeners.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Later, guys.